Here we go, folks. Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. Welcome into the show, y'all. I'm here with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing really good.
All right. So a very rough week for the teams we cover. They went 1-3, and we'll jump right into the first one, which was on Friday night. UCLA played New Mexico and just got abused. It was 14-10 in the third quarter, and then New Mexico just, they're a running team, and they just ran the ball right down their throats. And UCLA's defense has not been able to stop anybody all year, and their offense has been putrid. Nico has looked, just terrible, and it's a shame because then what results was earlier today, Deshaun Foster is let go. And now UCLA is without a head coach. They have an interim coach. I can't remember his name, but, that's what happens. And, we'll talk about Florida and what they should be doing and what they're not doing. But UCLA pulled the trigger. It was definitely early as far as his tenure. It was only, 12, 15 games. So that's not very long. But he went 5-7 last year, and this year they were only 3 games in, and they looked terrible in all 3 of those games, especially 2 of them against group of 5 teams or group of 6 teams. So, they had to do what they had to do. It wasn't going to get any better. It was just going to get worse against Power 4 teams, especially all the Big Ten teams they had to play. They're playing Penn State, they're playing USC. They were going to play some big-time teams, and they were going to get smoked pretty badly. You got to do something, and I think this is the right move. It's a shame because he was an alum, or he is an alum, and, you would hope that they'd give him a chance, but, it went as far as it was probably going to go. Obviously, that Big Ten Media Day was a harbinger of what was to come. So it didn't look great to start with, and it didn't look great to end with. So it is what it is. You move on. It's the cycle of college football. It's starting early. I don't think anybody expected week 3. It was not only UCLA fired their coach, but Virginia Tech fired Brent Pry. And, it's just the carousel just begins to churn. So your thoughts on this, Ian?
Yeah, and I agree. It was no offense to Moore or Foster, but it clearly wasn't looking like the best fit ever for him. And it's really tough for me to pin it on him. When Chip Kelly left, I'm not saying UCLA was world beaters, but they were having winning seasons. They went, I think 8-5 in his last season. They were averaging 8-9 wins, and they were, knocking on the door of the Pac-12. But then as soon as they jumped to the Big Ten, a much tougher schedule, much tougher travel, Chip Kelly leaves to be the offensive coordinator, and then they have to scramble to find a coach. And the move has been really, really rough, and I don't think UCLA was fully prepared for not only moving to the Big Ten, but also dealing with the coaching overhaul. Now, obviously, they went out and got Nico Imaliava and hoping he could bring some, life into the team. I mean, it was a very highly publicized, thing in the offseason, but it clearly is not working out. And I agree. I mean, you go 0-3, you lose to UNLV, you get blown out by Utah, and then you get blown out by New Mexico. It's time for a change, especially for a program like UCLA. It's certainly gotten bad. I know they haven't made a conference championship game since I think Jim Mora was there. And I think that might have been 2012. So it's been a long time since UCLA has really been in contention. And now they're going to have to start from scratch. They have plenty of time now to find the ideal candidate for them. That I think will benefit them that they didn't have before is that it was in the off season, and spring practices start almost immediately after when Chip Kelly left. So now you have more time to pinpoint the coaches you want. interview them, feel if they're the good fit, go out and maybe have the recruits that are recruiting coordinators that are still there, tell the recruits of what is coming, and maybe get some transfers in. But yeah, for the UCLA program, they had to pull the plug.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is struggling immensely, and the defense, which was been solid the last couple of years, has completely disappeared. They are missing tackles. They're not in the right spots. They're not doing anything. And the run game is just the opponent's run game is just running right through them. Like, they're not able to stop it in any way. New Mexico had 298 yards on the ground alone, just on the ground. So let's move on to Oregon, Northwestern. Oregon is a team that just is doing quite well, and nobody's talking about them. Dante Moore is not like the flashiest quarterback, but he is very solid and very accurate. He did have an interception in this game, but he was 16 of 20, which is over 75% passing. And, they were up pretty big going into the fourth quarter, and, they get those late scores, Northwestern, but this game was never really close. It never was in doubt. Preston Stone had a couple interceptions, just never really got really any steady flow. The run game for Oregon was really stout, 176 yards on the ground. Defensively, they just were able to stymie Northwestern and, prevent them from really doing anything most of the game until the backups were in. Good start to the Big Ten for Oregon, and considering that no one's paying attention to them right now, they're flying under the radar. They have some big games coming up. They've got Penn State, Indiana, Iowa, kind of, and then USC and Washington at the end. So that stretch where it's Penn State, Indiana will really decide their season. But your thoughts on this game, Ian?
Yeah, with this game, the defense definitely came out to show. And that's the kind of the impressive thing with Oregon is that we were expecting maybe the offense and defense to kind of take a step back, but they've been really impressive these first couple of games. Now, credit, I mean, obviously Northwestern isn't the high octane offense that we expect, but they did a really good job getting with the coverage schemes. The secondary and linebacking core did very well against Stone having those interceptions. And yeah, Dante Moore just did what he had to do to, win the game. I think he almost threw for 200 yards, but it was a very balanced attack, very typical, Oregon game. The main thing was how they chipped it down the field, with making it like third and manageable. There was a lot of third and shorts. I think they converted over half their third down conversions, and that's like a killer for any defense. So overall, good win for Oregon. Yeah, they're rising up the rankings, and not a lot of discussion has been made, but certainly I'm sure, more people will be talking about them soon.
Okay, next one we got is Clemson, Georgia Tech, and I called this one. I know it wasn't like that much of a call because Georgia Tech's been playing well, but and it was close. It was down to the last possession, 3 seconds left or whatever it was for the field goal. And it was a 55-yard field goal, so it wasn't like a gimme at all. Clemson came back in this game and, seemed like they might be able to eke this one out. But Georgia Tech, does the little things, is able to put drives together with, the play calling is imaginative enough to where they make a difference in, the fakes that they do, the screens that they pull off. The wide receivers are blocking downfield. Their linemen are doing a heck of a job. Haynes King is just, credit to him because he takes a beating every game and he just keeps coming back and he's better and better every week. And, he looks good in this game. And, they were able to run the ball effective enough to win this game. And, Clemson now has 2 losses, which is I don't think anybody thought coming into this year that Clemson would have 2 losses within the first 3 games. So now Georgia Tech is, up there with the ACC leaders. They've got a head start above almost everyone else because they have an advantage now on Clemson. Their schedule, I don't think they play FSU, and I don't know if they play Miami, which I don't think they do. So, honestly, now that was their hardest ACC opponent. The rest of their schedule, they should be able to coast through. And I mean, at this point, I feel like you could probably pencil them in. I know it's early and they lost 5 games last year, but I think they look better than most of the ACC teams outside of Florida State and Miami, and they don't play either of them. So, and they wouldn't play either of them until the ACC championship game. So, credit to them. Brent Key is doing a heck of a job. That team, from where they have been in the last several years with Jeff Collins and just struggling to do anything, now it's like night and day. And I'm excited to see what they do. I hope he stays because he is an alum, and I'd like to see them be contenders for a long time. But if he gets a call for a bigger job, you never know. I mean, money talks. So your thoughts on this one, Ian?
Yeah, and this, I remember telling you this was the one game I did predict Clemson to win, but I wasn't surprised if Tech pulled it off because they've always been a sticky team with these big-time programs. And, yeah, they pulled it off. And the problem was with Clemson is that they were playing Georgia Tech's game. They were falling right into their trap. They were forcing the ball, and they were not averaging, I have to look at the stats, but for Clemson to really win that game, they were having to average more than 4 yards of play, and Georgia Tech was just swallowing them up and making a very predictable offense. And even when Clemson, was coming back and taking the lead, Tech just wouldn't go away. And they came up clutching those big plays, especially that interception in the red zone. That was huge.
That was
for Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So overall, fantastic win for Tech. And yeah, they don't play a ranked team in their schedule until it's Georgia, clean old-fashioned hate. So it's really until the end of the year. So everything is in front of them now. It's their, spot to lose for the ACC.
Yeah, and you're right with that defense, opportunistic. Clemson was averaging 6.2 yards per play, so a little bit higher than what you thought, but still, I think Georgia Tech was able to slow them down in the passing attack enough to make a difference there, and they were still able to run the ball pretty well. Clemson was, and they were pretty efficient on 3rd down and 4th down. They were 8 of 12 on conversions, which is pretty good. But again, those turnovers, the one in the red zone, and then another fumble loss at some point too. I can't remember exactly where. But again, it just, in these games where it's really close, it comes down to, executing with the ball. And, Georgia Tech needed only I don't know, it was 30, 40 yards to get into field goal range. And they did it. And they did exactly what they needed to do. They made the plays to get there, and they gave their kicker a chance to win it, and they did. So, this is what winning teams do. And I think Brent Key has really tapped into a recipe there and figured it out for them. Let's move on to Oklahoma and Temple. This team, I keep talking about it. Napier just, this kid is a stud. He put up 282 yards Saturday. He did have a pick that wasn't great, but I mean, whatever. You throw a pick here and there, it's not the end of the world. And he had 63 yards rushing, two total TDs. This game was never in doubt. Temple is obviously overmatched, and it was 42-3 final score. Oklahoma looks like the real deal. If there is an SEC favorite right now, I think you have to say Oklahoma is there because Oklahoma has played a good Michigan team. Their offense is probably looking the best in the SEC outside of maybe Tennessee for the most part. And, I'd like to see this going forward because Their defense is very stout. I mean, you know, they like nearly shut out this team. They only allowed them 104 total yards, held them to 3 conversions on 16 attempts on third down. Just a dominant performance by Oklahoma. And, it was on the road in Philadelphia. But again, this is an overmatched opponent, so we can't take too much from it. But it does set the stage because next week Oklahoma plays Auburn. They get Kent State. God, Kent State has Florida State and Oklahoma right in a row. And then it's Red River Shootout, then South Carolina. But who knows with Sellers right now, then Ole Miss, then Tennessee, then Alabama, then Missouri, then LSU. So, like, they're going to get tested. This is just the beginning. I envision at least 2 losses there, maybe 3. But I think a team like this, because they beat Michigan, I think right now they're on the, like, if you have 3 losses, you might get in considering the schedule. So, they have a little window to get this right. They just need to get in the playoff. I feel like they'd be a very dangerous team playoff wise. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and when I was watching the highlights and overall of this game, the one thing that struck me with like Napier, and I know we've been hyping him up a lot, but I don't like comparing too many players to previous ones at school. But what Napier is really giving me shades of is of Mayfield. When Mayfield was there, a lot of people forget how mobile he was in the pocket and how he could run. And Napier is doing a great job. If your first or second option is not there, just get the first down on your legs. And he scored that 50-yard touchdown. He, had over almost 300 yards passing. He's very efficient with his vision and recognizing the coverage, especially because if it's not there, he's just going to get the first down on his legs. So overall, Oklahoma got the job done. They beat Temple. Obviously, much tougher challenges await them. But the good news is, at least with the Auburn game next week, it's in Norman. That's a really tough place to win at. A lot of these games are at home, so they could get the job done if, everything goes their way. They're at home. The crowd's into it. They can really make a run for the SEC championship.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, I feel like this is the front runner for the SEC. So let's move on to Wisconsin, Alabama, and talk about another front runner. Alabama, they thought was, dead and gone, buried. They thought that Florida State loss was just going to end their season, but, they dominated, a Big Ten team when this game was never close. Wisconsin had some late scores, but, it was basically a blowout for the most part. And Ty Simpson was nearly perfect, 24 of 29, 382 yards, 4 TDs. Ryan Williams had a really big game. He had 165 yards and 2 TDs. Just a badgering, just to use their team name. But no, I mean, Alabama is still a good team. There is a ton of talent. I think that Florida State game is a huge outlier because, one, we don't even know how good Florida State is because Florida State is yet to play anybody. They had a bye week this week. They play another tomato can next week. So we won't really know how good Florida State is until we see a couple of games. Somehow they've moved all the way up to number 7 in the rankings, which I don't see how anyone can feel justified by doing that, but whatever. But FSU's offense is one of those, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not like a prototypical, like, aerial assault offense. It's more of like run game, fake RPO kind of stuff. And Castellanos is like perfectly built for that stuff. And I get it. It worked really well against Alabama. Maybe they just weren't ready for it. Whatever. They obviously are a good enough defense to, hold Wisconsin in check completely. Wisconsin is not a great team, but they're not a group of 5 team. And, they held them to 209 total yards of offense. They put up 454. I think they still need Jam Miller to really round out their offensive attack to be able to run the ball better because the other running backs are not as good as Jam Miller. But I want to hear your thoughts on this one, Ian.
Yeah, so bear with me because these next two games I found little clips for them to describe it. So for me, this is what it was like watching Alabama.
Hey, finally! That's what we've been waiting for!
That's the Bama I know. Why is it taking it until week 3 to get this done? But yeah, Bama looked like Alabama. The defense smothered Wisconsin. O'Neal had no idea what was going on in the backfield. They were pressuring him. They were, forcing. They got 2 picks off of him, and the running game, which Wisconsin is known for, was a non-factor. And then the offense, Ty Simpson, flawless day. 4 touchdown passes, and then Ryan Williams, great game for him. He pulled an Ike Hilliard, caught the ball near the end zone, stopped, and then scored the touchdown. It's why he's the best, throwing it to the sideline because he finds a way, with as little space as possible to make
very elusive.
He's as elusive as anybody is in the country.
Yeah.
So overall, echoing what you were saying, Bama, looks great, and now we know how good they can be. It's a matter of continuing this through the rest of the year.
Yeah, because even in this game, they were only 3 of 8 conversions, which is not very good, but it didn't even matter because they didn't even really need to convert it because they got 22 first downs off first and second down. So obviously it didn't even matter. But okay, moving on to this was a heck of a game. I could have swore Tennessee was going to blow them out. I could have swore Tennessee was going to get them at the end with that late drive. I could have swore that they were going to go up by 2 scores when they had the ball off that fumble loss. Georgia somehow, this is almost now becoming where the Florida streak had been for so long as well, where they keep Tennessee losing these games just by some miracle, and they lose by this one by a miracle. Tennessee misses a 42-yard field goal as time expires. Just, you hate to see it. I tried to reverse jinx it, saying that Tennessee was going to lose, and they still ended up losing. So, shame on me for even thinking that. But Georgia wins 44-41 in overtime. I want to hear your thoughts on it, and I'll give my thoughts at the end here in a second.
So, once again, part 2. This is Tennessee.
Why can't I kill you?
I know that was every fan in Neyland Stadium thinking, why can't we kill them? Because this was the game they had it, and Georgia somehow snaked away to win out. But, Aguilar looked fantastic that first half, but this just shows how dangerous Georgia is. You can kill them in the first half, but you have to play 4 quarters with them because that defense adjusted quick to Aguilar. They were playing tighter man coverage to where the receivers did not have as much space, and they were dropping the ball more. And obviously they got those 2 interceptions, and they showed offensively that they can win these shootouts, which is terrifying because that was the notion for a while, is that Georgia, if it's one of these type of games, they're going to lose because you have to air raid them, and that's not what the offense is built for. But Stockton looked much better, much more comfortable in the pocket, and he clearly can still run the ball, so he was a dual threat there. But, yeah, Tennessee, man, the one thing that really killed them was that they had double the amount of penalties that Georgia had, especially at the end. They had that false start that pushed it 5 yards back, so instead of a 42, it was 42 yards instead of, 47. Yeah, so now credit, the kid completely shanked it to the right. So regardless, I don't know if that would have mattered, but that was just a kill. And I knew as soon as that kick sailed right, I was like, Georgia's going to win this because Georgia is built to win these tight red zone games that overtime is built for. So when it came down to it, Tennessee played a great first half, but Georgia played an overall better game. And you need to just beat them all around through quarter 1 to quarter 4. That's how you beat Georgia right now. And Tennessee, once they adjusted, it got a lot tougher. Now, credit, they still were able to get once Georgia would score, it would take 2 or 3 plays and an 80-yard touchdown pass or something ridiculous from Aguilar for them to take the lead. But Georgia overall, found a way to win is what it came down to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say that, Stockton is good enough, but I feel like still in this game, I felt like Tennessee was the better team. I know that Georgia is talented and they have, they're definitely one of the better teams in the SEC, but, they can be beat. I think that's what it shows in this. It's like, yes, they got lucky to win and, whatever, but I feel like a team like Alabama and a team like Ole Miss and a team like Georgia Tech should be pretty happy with the result. I don't know if Auburn's going to even be able to scare them, but those three teams are good enough to beat them. I mean, Georgia Tech almost did last year. Alabama and Ole Miss both beat them last year. So, I feel like the defense obviously struggled to stop the long passing attack. Brazil had 3 TDs, 177 yards, and Ole Miss throws the ball a ton. I saw it with Chambliss came in for them and still looked good, even though Simmons was hurt. And then Ty Simpson threw the ball all over the place, and I think he's going to do the same against Georgia. I don't think anybody's scared of Georgia anymore. Like, they were scary 3 years ago, but now it's like, I don't know. It's not the same like mystique that the defense had there for a couple of years. They gave up 500 yards of offense. Like, I don't think anybody's really scared of Georgia like they used to be. But let's move on. Oregon State, Texas Tech. Texas Tech. I mean, it was a blowout. It was never close. Texas Tech was kind of like playing with their food with this game. It was 45-14. Malik Murphy, I feel bad for you because you went from Duke to now to this situation, and they're 0-3, and good luck. But Morton for Texas Tech looked really good. They're just throwing the ball all over the place, deep shots left and right, connecting on long throws. This team, nobody's talking about. We talked about Oregon being under the radar. There's nobody talking about Texas Tech, and there is a good amount of talent on this team, and they're putting a ton of money into the team. So we'll see. It's interesting what will happen with them in the Big 12 conference play, but they put up 600 yards of offense, held Oregon State to 284 of total offense, and held them to 8 rushing yards, which is ridiculous to hold a major college football team to 8 rushing yards. But going forward for Texas Tech, they have Houston, who looked good, Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, Kansas State kind of falling off, BYU, we'll see. So that Utah, Houston, and Arizona State game will really decide their season. But at this point, they look like they're going to play really well in conference play. And I believe this Utah-Texas Tech game might decide it might decide who goes to the conference championship game, or it might be a rematch later in the conference championship game. Either way, it's in Salt Lake City next week, so that's a very interesting game. I'm glad I picked this game because I'm wanted to see how good this team was, and they're for real. They look for real. They look like a legit team. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and Tech, they have the number 1 offense in the Big 12 now. They scored 60 points the last 2 games, and then when they play Oregon State, which was not at Big 12 level but pretty close to it, just completely blew them out and held them to minimal yardage in the rushing attack. So that was really good to see from the defensive side, because we knew how good, especially with the transfers coming in, how good Tech's offense was going to be, but seeing how well the defense showed up was impressive. I will say, God bless Oregon State, because having to go from that to now next week is the Civil War, and you got to play Oregon. that's a tough back-to-back. But overall, Tech, great game. And like you said, they're now, especially with the schedule for them, same thing, that we were talking earlier with Oklahoma, it's kind of in their hands that they can definitely make a run for this because the offense looks elite. If the defense stays as good as it has been, that's a tough team to beat against anybody else who's playing against them in the Big 12.
Okay, let's move on to USC Purdue. And, one of the teams we cover actually won. So thank goodness for that. This game, USC, they didn't look like dominators, but this game was never in doubt because Purdue would shoot themselves in the foot every time they got close in the end zone, if there were turnovers, whatever. And USC, solid in their offensive attack. Maava was really efficient, 282 yards. Jacoby Lane looked good on a couple of deep passes. Ja'Kai Lemon with a couple of short throws he took for longer gains. The big, thick interception return for touchdown. That was interesting. Purdue, I know that podcast had called for the upset, and this game was never close. So, I don't know what they were thinking. I guess they just were hoping that their team could do some kind of noise in the system. But, USC is on a higher level than Purdue right now. No offense to you Purdue fans. It's just the fact of the matter. And, this game, it wasn't a blowout per se, but again, it wasn't really ever close. So it was kind of like middle of the road performance from USC. They were 4 of 4 on fourth down, which is really good, obviously. But they were 4 of 13 on third down. So you're 8 of 13 on conversions. That is good in the long run. Purdue had 3 interceptions. Like I said, those ones in the red zone were crucial. And, this Purdue team, who knows where they'll go. But USC looks like they're setting themselves up for at least a 9 or 10 win season at this point. And, credit to Lincoln Riley for really making the most of it, considering how bad the last 2 years went. But, Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, and defensively, it's been a breath of fresh air. And for USC, they finally, are able to get these stops. And while the defense did a lot of bend, don't break, they were able to get those turnovers, which were huge, like you said. But that was the biggest thing that was the thing that just cut the legs out from under them last year in the last couple of years has been how bad the defense is. But now they're starting to turn it around. Now, credit the competition hasn't been as tough with a lot of offensive juggernauts, but they got the job done. They did a great job, especially offensively, taking advantage of those turnovers. Maava, very smart game. And yeah, they were off to a slow start, but they had full control of the game. And there wasn't a lot of firepower that Purdue had that would really put a scare for USC. Yeah. But overall, good win for the Trojans and, can build this momentum, especially defensively moving forward.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to Pitt, West Virginia. Backyard brawl. It looked like West Virginia was in control, and then Pitt just turned it on there for a little bit and was starting to move the ball really well. Holstein was making big time throws, and West Virginia, Martial was just, I don't know if he was hurt. I didn't really I watched the highlight package, so I didn't understand why he was out for several plays. I don't know if it was concussion protocol or what. Did you hear?
No, I did not. I know they were just rotating quarterbacks.
Okay, so I guess that's what it was. It was just kind of weird because they were doing there were at least 3 quarterbacks that played.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what is going on here? But he did enough. He came in the fourth quarter and got West Virginia down the field to tie the game. They go into overtime. and they get the touchdown right away, and then Pitt is stopped. And credit to West Virginia because they were down 24-14, and they could have packed it in, but they kept coming, and their offense played well enough to win. I think Rich Rod's offensive scheme works really well in West Virginia, and they're 2-1 now, and I know that loss last week was bad, but I don't know, maybe it's signs of life, signs of potential progress in that school, because they haven't really had anything for a long while. I remember those days in 2007, the 2000s, where USF and West Virginia had epic battles, and West Virginia was one of those contenders year in, year out, and then they just, as soon as Rich Rod left, it just kind of fell off. So it's nice to see maybe some glimpses of that. We'll see. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and I love this rivalry, and again, I am pleading, please make this a regular thing, because I even said I had Pitt winning, but one of the things I said is you never know with this one, with Pitt and West Virginia. They always, like, no matter who looks like the surefire team that's going to win, it's kind of the thing with this rivalry that an upset will happen. And I know this doesn't technically classify as an upset, but I thought Pitt was better, and they played better through 3 quarters. But man, that 4th quarter, West Virginia found, some magic elixir to come back. I remember there was a picture on the feed, and it was from the ESPN that said that Pitt at one point in the 4th quarter had a 95.5% chance of winning. And West Virginia, again, statement to the rivalry, found a way to come back and win, and they won it in overtime. Like I said, it's a great game. It was a ton of great games, especially that went into overtime. But with the balanced attack, like you said, with the offense for West Virginia, they had a lot of, the rushing attack was keeping Pitt on its heels, and then they would with the play action passes, were able to exploit them middle of the field. But great game. Just play each other every year again, please.
Yeah, and because I was thinking about it, because I was making fun of Gus Malzahn's offense, but I actually like Rich Rod's offense with the right personnel. I think it does extremely well. If you have 2 running backs and a very mobile quarterback, you can really do a lot of things with the fakes and the RPO and all kinds of stuff. So let's move on to USF Miami. I'm not upset with it. It is what it is. Miami's just a lot better team right now. And they went through a 3-game stretch where they played 3 ranked teams, and they came out 2-1. I don't think anybody at the start of the year and before would have thought that would have been possible. They smoked Boise State. They played well enough to win against Florida, and then they kind of pooped the bed against Miami. Whatever, is what it is. It's not the end of the world, because you know what? They set themselves up. They've got an easy game next week. Then they got a bye week, and then they have the gauntlet of their conference schedule. So they didn't get many injuries in this game. They look pretty healthy. They'll be pretty healthy, hopefully, through South Carolina State, and healthy into the bye week, and then healthy to Charlotte. So they have a real opportunity here. This is their shot. Just like Eminem talked about, you got one shot to make it whatever. I don't even know the damn lyrics. I never know the lyrics of songs. But, this is it. Got to take this opportunity. The school is on the verge of getting a better conference bid. If the football team can show it, make the most of it this year, make the most of it next year, get in the OCS, anything is possible. I know that we may have to wait a little bit for conference realignment again in 2030, but hopefully by then we're perfectly put in position to take advantage of that. Basketball, hopefully, will be doing well. I'm really excited about Coach there. He looks like the real deal. In this game, Beck looked pretty good, but I will say Beck has flaws, and he had those 2 interceptions. That's why I'm always like, I'm not sold on this kid yet, because he makes mistakes. And, he did take advantage of USF's very suspect secondary, which I would have thought would have played better, but they just could not keep in check with Miami's speed. And, the D-line tried, but there was like almost no pressure on Beck for most of that game. And then I knew the run game was going to kill USF. Fletcher had 3 TDs, and, Brown looked okay. But, they were actually thinking about it. They were actually able to move the ball a decent amount. They just couldn't convert on their great field position. They had 2 field goals that prevented them from getting touchdowns there, which could have helped the score overall. And then, there were just points where, I think Brown had 1 interception and a fumbled loss. And, credit to Miami. They played well enough to win, obviously. They were the better team, 576 yards of total offense. I think, going forward, this is not the end of the world for USF. I think this is what it is. They're not on that level. Miami's just another level of college football right now. And hopefully USF can obtain that level of play in some point in the future, which I think they can. I don't think they're that far off. And, credit to Alex Golish for getting them 2-1 through that stretch. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and like you said, if you were to tell me the first 3 games USF would go 2-1, I would have easily taken it.
Yeah.
Now, figuring out they would have beaten Florida. I mean, as a Gator fan, not sure I'm okay with that, but whatever. What it does say, though, is that USF, they still didn't lie down and die. It's just Miami had a better game plan straight up than USF did. And they had it where they were not going to let Byron Brown beat them with their legs. They had a great game plan of, using linebackers as a spy, plugging the middle of the line, and making sure there was no escape routes that Brown had like he did against Boise State and Florida. So that tipped the cap to Miami. I mean, they have one of the best defenses in the country, and it shows. And the offense, they were able to exploit the secondary, and they were, as much as USF was able to get the 2 interceptions, Miami's defense, it was at least comfortable enough to where it didn't matter that those 2 picks happened and they just couldn't convert on the good field position. But like you said, now you're really looking into the real season. The main goal for USF is going to that conference championship.
Yeah.
And, winning it, obviously doing something the program has never done, and they obviously can. Now it gets, after what Tulane has done in the past couple of weeks, it's going to be a bit tougher than it might be. It won't be a cakewalk, but overall, great 3-game stretch. And also credit to Miami. They did not sleep on USF. They totally knew what was coming. They did a great job both rushing and passing, and just exploited USF's flaws. But overall, good win for Miami, obviously blowing out USF. But for USF, it's not the end of the world. You still have the whole season in front of you.
Yeah, and really looking at the schedule, the toughest games left are, North Texas on the road, Memphis on the road, and maybe that Navy game. But I haven't seen Navy. I haven't seen what they're all about this year yet. They beat Tulsa, beat UAB. They're 3-0, so we'll see. But again, if the defense plays well enough, I think USF's offense can put up points against Navy. And then they don't have to play Tulane in the regular season. So I wouldn't even worry about Tulane until it comes time to. But let's move on to Arkansas, Ole Miss. Like I said, Simmons was hurt. He wasn't there for 1 play and threw a touchdown, but Trinidad Chambliss, who I'd never heard of coming into this game, threw for 353 yards, 21 of 29, basically 75% completion percentage, a touchdown, 2 other touchdowns on the ground. He had 400 over 400 yards of total offense. Taylon Green actually looked good, so I will credit Taylon Green. I was talking trash a little bit about him, but he had 420 total yards, 115 on the ground. So had a really great game, kept them in it the whole time. They had a chance to win at the end, and then literally the only turnover of the entire game comes at the near end of the game, and Arkansas fumbles it, and Ole Miss recovers, and that was it. That was literally the difference in the game. It was basically even for everything else. There was only 3 total punts, 7 penalties for each team. Ole Miss had 25 first downs. Arkansas had 29. Arkansas had 526 yards of offense. Ole Miss had 475. Like, it was about as even of a game. 72 plays to 70, 9 of 12 third downs, 8 of 12 third downs. Like, this was a very even game all the way down the middle, and it was literally one play decided the game. That's how close of a game it was. Credit to Ole Miss for staying with it and to finishing this off, because they could have packed it in when Arkansas was driving there, but they the defense made the play to end the game. There wasn't a ton of defense in this game, obviously, but there was on one play, and that's all that mattered. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and this is one of those games where it's just a shame somebody had to lose, because it was very even and really good coming out party for Chambliss. Might be some discussion about who is going to be taking snaps now for Ole Miss, because he looked really good.
Yeah,
wasn't like forcing the ball at all against Arkansas's defense, which is something we saw with Simmons.
Yeah,
you just let the game come to him. Same thing with Green. Green had a fantastic game as well, and when it just came down to it, Ole Miss was able to kind of just jump ahead when they could. It was a shootout in the first half, and then the defenses really, whatever adjustments were made in the locker room really put everybody in a bind on both sides of the ball. But Ole Miss was able to make, the bigger, tougher plays and get the job done. And, it's a tough loss for Arkansas, but it's at least very, usually you would see Arkansas maybe get blown out in these kind of situations, but they were able to hang with an offensive juggernaut like Ole Miss. So that is very impressive for Arkansas and maybe something to build on this season. I will say for both of them, you might want to spend more time defensively in the film room and, training, because you can't have a game like this every week when you're playing in the SEC.
All right, here we go, Ian. I'm going to let you go first.
I mean, dude, what else is there to say that hasn't already been said? And now it's not only, bubble screen after bubble screen, bad read after bad read, no, forcing to throw the ball. And this is the frustrating part. The defense has been looking fantastic the first couple of games for Florida. Finally, the defense is holding teams to less than, at most 20 points a game.
Yeah.
Perfect. That should be enough. And Napier, the offensive genius apparently that he is, you can't get more than 10 points. 20 points is very winnable in the SEC, especially with the talent you have on the side on offense. You have elite wide receivers, what is supposed to be the best offensive line in the SEC, and we know how talented DJ is, and I'll get into him in a second. And you can only put up 10 points is very indicative of where this team is. And penalties hurt them again. They had the huge run by Ball early in the game get called back. And again, I was like, well, there goes that touchdown. I wonder how many more are going to get called back. It's frustrating. There's nothing else to say. And again, what else do you have to see if you're a fan of Florida to just be like, this isn't working? This just is straight up not working. Because we're in year 4. It's the same thing we saw in year 1 and even Mullins last year. So I don't know what exactly we're doing. And I'll talk about Lagway here. this was clearly like welcome to the SEC moment. Like this is we had the glitz and glamour last year, but the book is out on him, and him against cover 2 and cover 3 defense is bad. And I think I'm not trying to blame it all on Napier because some of this does go on Lagway. That pick 6 honestly was the dagger. I literally was like, that's the game, because there's no way they're going to be able to come back from a 2-possession game. And that's all they needed, because they didn't score another point the whole game. So instead of it being a 3-point game, it's a 2-possession game after that pick 6. And it was as clear as day. This linebacker was creeping, and he still threw it in there. He forced it. Same thing with the other interceptions. He was just playing – he was like playing NFL blitz, where you just throw it deep and hope your guy catches it. It's a learning experience for Lagway, knowing you can't have everybody come down with it. But again, if you're a coach, how do you not tell Lagway, dude, just either call drag routes and mesh concepts, have him run the ball, or how about just running the ball in general with Jaden Ball? We know how good he is, and not make it so one-dimensional. So I'm hoping that what we're going to see coming up, because now we know how tough Miami's defense is, that something's going to get through to Lagway, that you cannot, just expect to throw the ball in the middle of the field and not expect the linebackers or safeties to be lurking there and, pick the ball off. And you can't be throwing the ball deep expecting everybody to catch it. So, yeah, it's just frustrating. I've texted, there's a reason I'm wearing this jersey. I know it's Emmitt Smith, but I'm getting like a sense that this is our generation's version of the 1979 season, which is what they were wearing during that year. Because, I mean, if they play like this, it was literally like a carryover from the USF game. There's no way I can see them winning another game on that schedule if they continue to play like this.
What the hell? It's like my lights are like doing something funky.
Well, they knew LSU won, so they wanted to switch it to purple.
There it is. Okay. I was like, what's going on? Those interceptions, the one at the end of the half that resulted in the field goal, and then obviously the one that resulted in the pick 6, were the difference in the game. And, DJ, it's all on DJ there on those 2 plays specifically. I don't blame him late for the interceptions where he was trying something. He forced, obviously, that one to Trey in triple coverage, whatever. You never know if he comes down with it, then it's like an amazing play. And they were down by 10 at that point. I think if he probably holds up a little bit, they're close to field goal range. If they hit a field goal, it's a 1-score game with like 5 or 6 minutes left. Who knows? The one after that where it was like, whatever, like I'm not going to fault him for that one. That was the end of the game. Like he needed to do something. Defense looked amazing. They held Nussmeier in check outside of like maybe a drive and a half. And I think they got like half of their first downs on like one of the drives. They held them to only 10 first downs total, which is a amazing stat line. Like they were really doing their best job and keeping them in check. And then that long touchdown, like 87-yard touchdown, like it's so demoralizing because it would have been demoralizing to LSU to have given up that big of a play, and it would have kind of like taken the air out of the stadium. But instead, you don't get it, and then it's a penalty, and then that drive's killed, and then whatever. And it's just like, man, like it's like not only, yes, there's been penalties, but there have been like the most crucial penalties on like so many big plays. Like I think there's been like 4 touchdowns called back for penalties. And, you're not going to win many games only scoring 10 points in the SEC. This is not 15 years ago when LSU was winning games 9-6. It just doesn't exist anymore. You got to score 20-plus points. And Billy has not been able to do that. I know we've beaten a dead horse. You know, you called for his firing a long time ago. I called for it last year after A&M. You know, I bet I was kind of back on board a little bit after the finish, but it seems like this is it. This is the end of the road. And like Billy is not getting the most out of this team. I even saw former Gator player Stephen Harris, who was pretty on board for a while. He jumped off ship. So even he is saying that we need to get someone else. Like, it's just it. Like, it's not working. The offense is not enjoyable. It's not fun to watch. It's, you know, painful. They make mistakes. I mean, there is a ton of talent on the offensive roster. Jaden Baugh is a stud. Vernell Brown is going to be a huge star. You know, there's a ton of receivers. Dallas Wilson hasn't played yet, but should be out there soon. The offensive line is great. I mean, even though DJ struggled, DJ has a ton of talent and more than likely will end up doing well. He's just a sophomore. The kid's only 19. So, like, give him some grace there a little bit. He had one bad game, you know, really terrible game. But, you know, for the most part, he's been pretty good outside of this game and maybe last week against USF. He's looked better in other games. So, but defensively, they look amazing. I think, you know, going into this Miami game, they're not going to fire Napier. They would have fired him already. So they're coming into this game. If he loses this game badly, more than likely he's fired. I don't see him surviving if they lose like 44-20. I don't envision him coming back to Gainesville on that flight. So, or the bus ride. So this is it. This is literally Billy's last stand. If he does not win this game, because they have a bye week after the Miami game, I think that opens up a possibility of firing Billy and trying to get a clean break there and, you know, restarting the year at least. You know, it would only be 4 games into it, so a lot can happen from there on out. But, you know, this is not good. This is not a good team right now offensively, and it's not fun to watch. It's not an enjoyable product. You know, they have a tough stretch. Everyone knows it. We've talked about it for ad nauseum for the last like 9 months. We know what the schedule is like. They have to do something better than this. And, you know, as of this point, there's nothing they can do because Billy keeps calling the plays, keeps doing the same things over and over again. I will say that there was a call for a more quick game, and there was more slants. There were more things to get the ball out quick, which DJ did. And he did have, you know, 287 yards, and he was 33 of 49. It's just he forced it when there was a lot of times when there was no one uncovered. And that was the problem. He needed to just take either a sack on third down, which is not the end of the world. That's just, you know, basically punting at that point. Or if you're on first and second down, throw the ball away. Survive to play another play. There's no reason. If nobody's open, you don't have to force the issue every freaking time. And he did it several times. Obviously, 5 interceptions. So DJ needs to learn to throw the ball away if there's nothing there. Or, like we talked about before, tuck the ball and just run with it. Take what yards you can and play another play. You have any more thoughts before we move on?
I mean, Napier should have been fired 2 years ago after the Arkansas game. That's all I'll say. I want to get in a time machine and just say, Strickland, look, I know you're going to interview Napier, but please interview more than one dude. There's got to be somebody else.
Okay, moving on. Let's move on to Texas A&M, Notre Dame. This was a very close game. Notre Dame goes up at the end, and it looks like they might have big enough lead to win, and they're going for the extra point, and they miss the extra point. Texas A&M, Marcel Reed had a heck of a game. Actually, both him and Carr had really good games. And but Marcel Reed gets the best of them because an extra point. Notre Dame misses the extra point. Texas A&M hits the extra point, and that's the difference. Literally, an extra point was the difference in this game. So that's sad for Notre Dame, but they don't have a tough schedule the rest of the way. Their toughest game is against USC, and they should be able to win out the rest of their games. If they get to the playoff, I don't know. 10-2 with that bad of a schedule, like they really wouldn't have a good win outside of that. Last year they went 11-1, so 11-1 against a bad schedule is something, but like 10-2 against a bad schedule. I mean, last year we had teams that didn't make it because of that. So I don't think they make it if they don't they don't have a hard enough schedule because they don't have a good enough win the rest of the year. But A&M, credit to them, they're 3-0. They looked a lot better this game offensively. Defensively, they struggled. Notre Dame was able to move the ball pretty well. Their run game was pretty good. Jeremiah Love made some plays. Price made some plays. But Marcel Reed was a difference in this game for A&M. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and this is, again, one of those ones where it is a shame somebody had to lose, especially because Marcel Reed and Carr were both having really good games. But Marcel Reed's mobility was really a struggle for Notre Dame. They just could not contain him. And same thing could be said, though, with Love. He still had a really good game. I know he didn't rush for over 100 yards, but he was just a wrecking ball, especially in those short yardage situations. But it is something unfortunate that it was an extra point that ultimately was the killer, because instead of going into overtime and then winning it, possibly on the last possession, that touchdown sealed it for Texas A&M. And very good game for A&M, and this is really tough for Notre Dame in their playoff hopes because, like you said, 10-2 best case scenario, and the only hope you can have for Notre Dame is that USC is just hitting it on all cylinders when they, come in the middle of the year to South Bend, and you beat them then. But it's going to be really, really tough for me to see that, even if they go 10-2, to make the playoff, because these were two ranked teams, Miami and Texas A&M, and while they did lose in one possessions, they still lost. And obviously, you could say if things went this way or that way, they might have gone different. But in the end, A&M gets a huge win, and Notre Dame, they're going to be looking up now at the schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to be able to come back from this because, again, they don't have a tough opponent the rest of the way. Okay. This ain't the same old Vandy, my brother. Huge win for Pavia. Like, I'm kind of amazed how well they did, but granted, they didn't have to play against Lenora Sellers most of the way. So, that honestly was really the difference in the game. And, Sellers went out either like end of first quarter or what is it? I'm trying to think if this is on my screen or my camera. I can't tell if this is on my lens or not. Trying to. There's something on there. I might have to clean the lens later. But Pavia looked great in this one. They were able to do a lot of things with him because he's very he's very like magician-like. He's hard to get down. He's very elusive. He keeps plays alive. It helped that, for South Carolina, Luke Doty is kind of a statue back there. So, Vandy's defense was able to tee off a little bit. He had a little bit of, movement, but nothing that really did anything to scare Vandy in any way. Vandy just kept doing things, plugging away. Lassiter had a huge run for a score. They were just the better team throughout this game. And yes, it does count that Sellers was not there. So, but at this point, it doesn't matter. They get the win. South Carolina loses, and now Vanderbilt, they may not be a top tier SEC team, but they're going to be threatening for 8-9 wins. And if I were Alabama and LSU, I would be looking out for this game, especially LSU. It's in Nashville. But Vandy gets 2 easy games in a row, Georgia State and Utah State. So they really could be, by the end of this month, they could be 5-0, which I don't think anybody would have saw that coming. So hats off to Pavia and Clark Lee. This is a huge start for them. It is amazing. It's a great story. And I'm excited to see how this finishes out. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and for this game, you could say a lot. Obviously, Sellers not being in the game is was a huge deal for South Carolina, and because he was the engine, and it clearly showed he was the engine for that offense, and obviously just getting the touchdown in the whole game proves that. But one thing I do want to mention, a lot of people are saying, oh, Sellers and all that, but Vandy played their game, and South Carolina fell right into it, and that has nothing to do with Sellers. Vandy played keep away. They were winning the time of possession game. They had almost 10 more minutes of possession than South Carolina, and they forced more turnovers. Now, credit, again, yes, one of them was, the interception on Dottie, but forcing 4 turnovers is not by accident. So Vandy, like I said, it was a Vanderbilt type game on how they win these, kind of close, tight games. Vandy, honestly, the comparisons between Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech are insane. I pray they meet in a bowl game or meet up at some point, because that would be just fireworks. But fantastic win for Vanderbilt, especially because I thought South Carolina, it was on the road in Columbia. That was a tough environment to win. And, man, they just shut the crowd out like that. So very good win for Vandy. Definitely not, like you said, not the same old Vandy. They have 2 layup games. I know they played Georgia State, which ironic somehow they lost to last year, and then Utah State, both in Nashville. And then they go on the road to Tuscaloosa and start the rest of their SEC schedule. So very good game. And again, Vandy's the typical trap game now for SEC teams.
Okay. Last one, Duke, Tulane. Mensa comes back to his former team, plays decently, 30 of 51, ton of passing plays. Obviously, they went and, put up a ton of yardage, had a pick. But Retzlaff is the story here, because Retzlaff had 4 TDs. He had 356 total yards, 111 on the ground. Just this kid, I know many people don't know him because he played at BYU last year, but the kid is really good. He's very capable, a very willing runner, and he's pretty quick for his size, and, decent enough arm. And, this Tulane team is dangerous. And, they had a really big lead on Duke. They were up 24-3 and looked like they were cruising. Duke came back in this one and made it really close. There was a lot of onside kicks at the end, but, credit to Tulane for getting that big enough lead to really take advantage of this. And Tulane is 3-0, and now Duke is 1-2. So Tulane has a lot to play for. They don't have to play USF in the regular season, but as far as their schedule, they have a pretty easy road outside of the Memphis game. And so looks like, Tulane should be probably a lock for the American Conference Championship game at this point. Your thoughts, last one, Ian.
Yeah, and like I said, it looks like with the road forward, obviously the last tough game they have, they go on the road to Oxford and play Ole Miss next week, but they start conference play against Tulsa.
Yes, Ole Miss too. Yeah, I forgot that one. Yeah,
but again, non-conference, it's okay, and you get a big win against Duke, which had a lot of hype around them, especially when they had Mensa. But they clearly are favored in most of these games, and it is hopefully for USF fans a collision course between the two.
Yeah.
In Memphis, ironically, same thing with USF, would be the toughest opponent. Both of them have to go on the road against Memphis in those games. But yeah, Tulane has been consistent. They've been really not missed a step. I thought maybe they might be taking a step back, but they had a great win against Northwestern. They kind of were sleeping on themselves against South Alabama, but they woke up big time against Duke, and now they go on the road to Ole Miss. We'll see how they play against that one, but once conference play starts, we'll see how the real season begins for them.
Okay, that is the end of the show. Find us at haterradio.com for all of our articles. Ian, what's your handle again?
Yeah, it's G5 Gibson, and I do have a G5 team of the week. Obviously, there weren't any.
Yeah. Forgot. Sorry. Yes.
There weren't any big upsets, but I did find one, and this might be an obscure one, but shout out to my roommate, Michael, who was a graduate of Florida International University. FIU defeated FAU, Florida Atlantic, this past Saturday, 38-28, and it was the first time they have beaten the Owls since 2016, and a very big win for them, obviously, because FAU and FIU were kind of born near the same time, a lot of similarities, but FAU was clearly kind of blown past them. As a USF fan with UCF, we kind of get the same feeling, but great win for FIU, and they were my G5 team of the week.
Nice. And then shout out to our sponsors, the Kenwood Bar. It's on 28th Street between 22nd Avenue and 13th Ave in St. Pete. It's owned by a friend of mine that's a USF alum. So go there for all your sports bar needs. It's a great little local bar. They have some food trucks outside every once in a while. But that's the show. You can find us on our socials at Hater Radio. Search that up. It'll come right up. And we'll talk to you on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Take care, y'all.